Get your hands on a Subway steak melt. Try the irresistible Big Philly cheesesteak or tender, juicy steak and cheese. And don't miss out on the unforgettable steak, bacon, egg, and cheese for breakfast. Subway steak melts. Melty goodness made irresistibly delicious. Subway. Eat fresh. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. This is part 2 of the Mammoth Nuclear Winter NBA Lockout podcast with Marc Stein and Ric Bucher from ESPN.com, ESPN the magazine, respectively. And if you missed part 1, check it out on PodCenter or iTunes. Here's part 2. Buch, you look at the player side. Are there 3 people that you say, man, I'm looking at that guy and I think that guy's going to step up? There's the voice of reason right there. Is there one person? Is there anybody?
The difficulty is that probably the most intelligent guys or the most well-spoken. I mean, look, didn't we think Derek Fisher could be that guy going into the system? So you automatically think, okay, well, maybe Shane Battier could be that guy. You know, those guys. But the problem is, like, finding somebody that speaks for all of the players. Quite honestly, I don't think it can be a player. I feel as if they need to hire a negotiator that then talks to the agents, talks to the players, takes it all in and says, this is the best position that we can take for everybody. Because no matter what player it is, he's operating from his experience. There's no way that he can satisfy everybody. That's kind of the problem that we have now. That's the problem that David Stern has now. As great a negotiator as he is that he's trying to serve new small markets. He's trying to serve new large markets. He's trying to serve the New Yorks and the LAs who have revenue that is just outrageous at this point. I mean, the deal that the Lakers have, there was never an owner previously that had a deal like that, or the one that Boston's about to sign, or the one that New York's about to sign. The disparity between the owners is so huge. It's a challenge to bring them all together. And that's one other thing that we haven't touched upon, where again, if I'm sounding pro player, it's because to me the owners want the NFL system, but they don't want to have to share revenue the way the NFL owners do. And to me, that's the cake and eating it too. You're asking for having this, like having all the pluses of all the systems out there, but yet you're not willing to make any of the concessions that even those other owners make.
But I don't think the revenue sharing matters because it's ultimately they get their 50% cut and it's up to them to figure out how to split it. Like the players don't really have that much say in how that happens anyway. Steiny Mo.
But if you have the revenue sharing, then the smaller markets are like, okay, well, I mean, you at least have the ability to say to them, hey, look, we can't give you everything, but you know what? We're giving you enough money that you shouldn't worry about who's signing a mid-level exception with whom.
Steiny Mo, would you rather have a canceled season or 3 contracted teams and 45 less jobs, and now the players can split that 50% and it's able to be spread out a little more lucratively?
Well, obviously I want to avoid a canceled season any way we can, but being realistic, I just don't think contraction is – I mean, talk about canards. There's just no way they're going to contract assets that are going for $300+ million. They think they're going to sell the Hornets for $350 million. The Hornets, who might not have Chris Paul.
And keeping them in New Orleans. In New Orleans, they're going to sell them for $350 million.
So I mean, there is not going to be contraction. It's just not. It's just. I mean, it's to me, it's laughable to even think that they're going to go that way.
By the way, if they sell the Hornets for $350 million, I'm going to send you both a check for $350. Because there's not a chance in hell.
I'm writing
unless
that
that's
down.
Unless that's a team that, unless somebody quote unquote buys it for $350 million, but really it's one of those shady deals like the Sixers deal.
Hey, in all seriousness, you got to say though, the people of New Orleans have stepped up big there. They've since January and February when stuff looked bleak. I mean, they sold a lot of tickets. They had sponsors buy in.
I'm pro New Orleans. I think basketball should stay there, but nobody is buying that team for $350 million. That's insane.
Joe Meade, can you cut this sentence out and send us the MP3? We're going to need that documentation later.
Absolutely.
Please. What did the Sixers go for? I mean, I don't even.
I want to say it was around
but
4.
They haven't.
They took all the debt though.
The difference with the Sixers too is that they just have a horrible arena deal, and with the Hornets, the deal that the governor is making, and that's the thing, is that it's not just the fan base and the corporate sponsors that have stepped up. The state of Louisiana is creating a scenario where they're going to be taken care of, and that's what makes that so attractive, and that's why in the 76ers case, I mean, the way that arena deal is structured. That really hurts anybody buying it, and yet it's still sold, and that's another issue here for me is all the crying for all the problems that they have. The Atlanta Hawks, supposedly a destitute team, had a buyer on the hook and said, you know what, you're not good enough. I think we'll hold on and we'll try again. Who does that if you're a failing enterprise? Nobody.
Yeah. Well, because the reason that they think these franchises are going to be worth more is because they're going to have this new system that is so much more favorable to all the teams. And there's your chance for New Orleans to get sold for $350 if we miss a season. And by the time the dust settles here, the owners have some sort of unbelievable deal that's in their favor. Do you think?
Are you suggesting collusion? Are you suggesting that?
I am.
As of a
I'm
year
not
ago,
suggesting it. I'm saying it.
When the Warriors bought in, that they paid a mint, they paid $400+ million because they said, oh, you know what? We know what this new deal is going to look like.
Yep.
We can be assured exactly what this new deal is going to look like. I mean, to me, that right there tells you everything you need to know about the owner's position, and quite honestly, who's at fault for the fact that we may miss a season.
The good thing
you
is
left out Detroit. Detroit's worse. Who the hell would buy Detroit right now? Name me a single sane person with money who would buy that franchise unless they thought they were blowing up the system.
Well, blowing up the system, or that there was a way to make money.
The beauty is that Celtics alumnus Joe Lacob, I'm sure, will someday be on the BS report, and you can ask him direct.
Well, we all know, but Buke knows more than anybody, that Warriors team was a great buy. And we were saying that for months and months and months, that you're buying into a great TV market with great fans, and if you can't make basketball work there, then you're a total failure as a businessman.
But all these things you guys are throwing out here, for all the stuff we say about how the players are kind of getting beat up on the PR side, I actually think sentiment is really as strongly against Stern and the owners as it's ever been, because we're all just mad that our game's been taken away. All of us, media-wise, fan-wise, we're all just mad.
But I think that's among us. I think that's among you. Talk about sort of having a different perspective when you're inside the business. I just get the sense, and I'm amazed at the number of fans who just say they're the owners. You're supposed to take whatever they give you. You're not supposed to have. I mean, look, to me, even the idea that the players, they're out of touch with reality. Look what they've done. What an idiotic move. They're risking entire year's salary. Yes, they are risking their money on principle because they don't think they're being treated fairly. How can any red-blooded American look at that and go, man, why didn't they just cave? What are they doing? They should just take the money. Whatever money is thrown out there, they should just take that. I mean, look,
how they did it, how we got to this point.
you can fault them for their strategy and their timing, but
Yes.
the fact that they took a stand, to me, to criticize them for that is the wrong criticism.
Buke, you're approaching it the wrong way, though. The reason they're even at this point is because they were so poorly led for so long, and because they had such a lack of urgency and such a tough time mobilizing that it led to this point. And even when you read the quotes, the last 24 hours about why they rejected that offer and why they're decertifying, multiple guys, including Andrew Bogut last night on Twitter, was like, we called their bluff. What bluff? This isn't a bluff. They want that system where they're shutting down the season. How's that a bluff? I don't see a bluff.
But that, you know what? They did call their bluff, because we're going to find out now. Because you can't tell me ultimately. I mean, look, if we're saying that blowing up the season isn't good for anybody, and this is where David Stern and the owners keep flipping back and forth in terms of like, oh, we're losing all this money having a season. We need to change it. Oh, we're not having a season. We're losing even more money. Okay, well, wait a minute. Which is it? It can't be both. It cannot be both. You can't lose money having a season and then lose money not having a season. It's got to be one or the other.
Look at one of the three. Look at one of the three
owners. Basically, what they're saying is, we're going to find out. We are going to find out whether you really feel that not having a season is a beneficial thing. And I just think the whole idea of getting into a legal wrangle and having to give up, to cede control of this process to the courts and to lawyers, I don't believe at the end of the day that is any more palatable to the owners than it is to the players.
I think you're insane. This is billionaires negotiating against millionaires. And on top of that, the owners would, if this leads to a situation with what happened in the NHL, I think they're fine with it. And I think they're fine with sacrificing the season. And what do they care? They're going to own these teams for the next 20 to 30 years. The players play for 8 to 10. I mean, give me a break. They don't care about losing the season.
But if that's the case, then what damage is being done if they do that?
Well, look at one of the three people leading this is Ted Leonsis, who owned the Capitals when they had the NHL strike and watched how that affected the league for the better and led to a better league that made more financial sense and everything. That's where we're headed. Bill, you're saying that missing a season and doing this is a catastrophic mistake. It is. So you can't have it both ways. Yeah, but then so then you're saying that the owners don't know that they're making a catastrophic mistake. No, I think they do know that, and I don't think they care. Is the difference. I think they're fine,
so
and their attitude is
they're blowing up their league, and they don't care that they're blowing up their league and that it'll never be the same. I think that they think it will be the same, and I think they're wrong. And I don't think it will ever be the same because I don't think people will forgive them for blowing up the league a year after we had just one of the 5 best seasons. I cannot believe you're saying that. I really can't believe you're going there. Where I'm going? Where am I going? The whole that it'll never be the same. I don't know if people come back. In hockey, it took 5 years for people to come back. Like with the way talent works in the NBA, right now we're in a talent boom. We have some of the best young talent we've ever had. Has hockey ever had a year like the NBA had last year? No, I mean, not from a rating standpoint, that's for sure. Not from a fan interest, not from a marketability standpoint, no. Okay, so we can't compare that. Well, I think you compare it in that sense. That's why this is happening. This is happening now because the timing is not accidental. The league is at an all-time high. The economy and public sentiment is at a place where it's like, they're not going to begrudge anybody for turning down money. I get that. But that's where this situation is completely different. The NBA was not impacted by the economy. Let me say that again. As bad as the economy has been, the NBA was not impacted by the economy. They had revenue growth. So saying the players should just take this deal because everybody's hurting doesn't fit. Because the fact of the matter is, their industry is not hurting. But Buke,
I don't think it has anything to do with what happened the last 4 years. I think they're worried about what's going to happen in the next 10 years. And that's when they're acting, whether you agree with it or not, I think they're trying to be proactive and saying we need a new system that's going to address all the stuff that we think is going to happen with attendance. Like ESPN just had this, Barry Blynn's group, the research group, just did this huge study about fan behavior and how much it's changed from 1998 to now. And it's something like 68% of people now would rather just stay home and watch games on TV over going to games. And all of the people who are doing the same research studies, whether it's professional leagues, whether it's ESPN, whether it's the NBA or the NHL or whoever, they're all getting back the same data, that people don't like to go to games as much. And the NBA right now doesn't have the revenue system to totally really address that. And what's going to happen is teams are going to get more and more money from their local cable stations, but they're also going to get a stake in them. You saw it with the Celtics. The Celtics are getting a big stake of Comcast Sportsnet or whatever it's called.
Yep.
And how do you revenue share that? If I own 40% of my local TV station, how am I going to share that revenue? I'm just pocketing it, and you can't ever really totally find out what I made because I own the station. So I don't know how that gets solved.
So we won't know ultimately just how much you're making, but the fact of the matter is that there's a number that Milwaukee and Sacramento and New Orleans and Memphis will take in conjunction with the deal that they make with the players that will keep everybody happy. And they're clearly not attempting to get to that number, because if they got to that number, then we wouldn't have these strident small markets. We wouldn't have Michael Jordan saying, screw that, I want 46% unless you assure me these other things. And the one thing that bothers me about it, and it's a contradiction in terms of their competitive balance, is that takes them more toward a baseball model, where you're basically conceding that the Charlottes and the Milwaukees and your small markets really don't have a chance at playing for a championship year in and year out. But let's be honest, the way the NBA works,
that can't happen.
Nobody wants to see that anyway. So it sounds good that we give everybody a chance and that we operate on football. Let's just accept the fact that football is in a unique place and that mirroring that is not going to work. At the end of the day, why don't we just have a functioning NBA that works and allows 30 teams to exist? And who knows, every once in a while you might have a San Francisco Giant team jump up, or an Arizona Diamondbacks jump up and win a championship. And that just allows enough hope for those small markets to say, well, it is possible if all the stars align that we could win a ring every once in a while. And meanwhile,
hold on. In baseball, the difference is you can do it. You can do the small market thing. You can develop guys. You can either trade them right before they become free agents or let them go as they're free agents to get the draft picks. There are devices put in place that can enable you to do what Tampa Bay does if you draft well, if you scout well, etc. In the NBA, it's purely about, did you get lucky? Did you get Kevin Durant? How do you think Oklahoma City would be doing right now if their best player was Russell Westbrook and they were a 32 and 50 team? Like, I don't think they'd be doing as well as they're doing.
We can get that's a whole other podcast about the Russ Westbrook Kevin Durant battle.
My God! That is
Russ Westbrook is the best player on that team.
All right, but I'm just saying, like, I think Durant. Well, you're wrong on that, but I think
trying
Durant,
to outrageous each other.
No,
that's almost as outrageous as Bill Simmons saying he'd rather watch the Kings than the Clippers.
Well, you'll see next year when I'm taking you to a Kings game.
And your book of hockey will be available soon.
I can't
wait. Your 700-page book on the NHL.
The fight chapter is going to be awesome. I can't wait to research it.
Yeah, Steiny Mo, the other thing you have to keep in mind is if you watch the Pigskin Pick'em group, and you look at how Simmons is doing when he has when he was just outraged at what was going on with the NBA. I think he had like 2 points in that week. It has a direct correlation in how he's doing in his betting or in his groups as to how angry he is about some other situation in the sports world. There's a direct connection.
One more question I want to hit with you guys. The agents in this whole thing have been kind of the sleeper cell unit of this whole lockout. You rarely hear from them. They've been orchestrating a ton of stuff behind the scenes. I think they have a real impact on what many of the writers have written, because every writer has their 2, 3, or 4 agent sources that they get a lot of info for, and just naturally the process is you're gonna be swayed by somebody you talk to and gives you info and all that stuff. Why haven't we heard more about the agent's role in this? Are people just afraid to write about the kind of impact that they've had in this whole lockout? I'll give that question to either of you.
I mean, I think it's been written about, but also, I mean, I don't know that their impact, have they been hugely successful in what they've wanted to do? I mean, they've been pushing decertification since July, and at the end of the day, the union dissolved 4 months later after ignoring that push for the whole summer. So right. I think the impact they've had is debatable.
First of all,
I mean, they've definitely poisoned the players.
I have to dispute this whole idea that, I mean, you've basically just thrown the integrity of every writer who covers the NBA under the bus, saying that.
No, I did not.
Yes,
I did not. No, I didn't. I did not.
Yes, you did.
I did not.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Do you think it's important that writers who are talking to agents and getting info from them, and yet that seems like their strongest foothold for who they get their information from, and they're passing that information along?
Well, I would definitely disagree with that. I mean, any of us have sources in all the camps. I mean, you can't just live off, sourcing from one camp. That's not how far are you going to get with that.
Not only that, but it is presuming that, oh, you know what, this agent told me something that was really good or interesting or whatever, and that we wouldn't check it out with the other parties that are involved in this thing to see where it stands, or just because it's juicy or titillating or it's information that somebody else might have, that we're immediately going to run with it. I mean, look, it's a synthesis of, at least for me, and I know this is the case with Steiny Mo. I can't speak for anybody else. You don't talk to one party and they give you a perspective or they give you something. And first of all, I'm looking at it and going, you know what? That's their position or that's their their agenda, but I don't necessarily know that that's the right one. Or if it is an agenda, how does that dovetail with everything else that's going on? So at the end of the day, with the agents, I would agree with Steiny Mo. Have they been a factor or they've had a lot of ideas? Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, how have they impacted this process? Not nearly as much as they had hoped to, for sure, and certainly not as much as David Stern is suggesting. That somehow that we'd have a deal if it wasn't for the agents. I believe that's probably, I don't know how he did it, but and I wouldn't even say he made them a sympathetic figure, but David's overstatement of what the agent's role has been in this has made them boogeyman that, maybe the general public, it gives them an extra, person to get mad at. Yeah, these agents. The fact of the matter is, these agents are hurt as much or more than anybody else by guys not playing right now because, as contrary to what everybody believes, agents in this day and age don't make their money off of the contracts. They make their money off of marketing their players. That's where they get paid. The competition to sign guys has caused the percentage that guys get off of contracts to be whittled down so far. That's why you don't have independent agents anymore. That's why you have all these conglomerations, because you have to have a marketing arm to be able to get your money back. So this whole idea that the agents are holding out and they're doing it so that they can, negotiate deals for the next 20 years, it completely flies in the face of reality right now. These guys would love to be working right now. They just look at it and go, this is just such a stranglehold. I mean, you could argue that with the shorter contracts, this actually benefits agents because they got to go back to the table more often. But they know that going back to the table, negotiating contracts, you're not making any money doing that. So that's not what the issue is here. Being able to move your guy from a market into a better market is far more valuable.
I mean,
what do you think,
if you're a player, who's your first call going to be? You're going to call your agent to help you interpret the data. And now, there's no question that you've got people say, and Stern being number one on the list, that the agents are the agents aren't accurately portraying the deal. But by the same token, I've heard a lot of players complain that they've called the union for updates and they're not getting the info from the union they want. 2 weeks, not this week, the week before, when they had the first mandatory meeting of player reps, one of the issues that player reps talked about in that meeting to Billy Hunter was, we are not happy with the level of information that we consistently get from the union. And a handful of those player reps asked the union, can we have a hard copy of the deal to take back to our teammates, agents, etc.? And we're told no.
All right.
If I'm a player, of course I'm going to go to my agent and ask for an interpretation of the deal. I mean, that's part of what they're paid for, isn't it?
I've talked to a couple of the agents, and I think they're pretty rational. I don't understand. It seems like they're kind of in no man's land. They're not really affecting this process. The only way they're really affecting it is by, what they're basically, the players are talking to different writers or TV reporters or whoever through the agents. But it feels like they're arguably the smartest people in this entire process on either side. And I wonder, let's say, pick an agent like Arn Tellem. Let's say you just put Arn Tellem and Adam in a room for 6 hours with all the progress that we've made so far. You take Stern and Hunter out of it. It's basically like an NHL face-off where you're just like, guys, get out of the face-off. You keep jumping the gun. Where you're getting out, go over there. Now we have Silver and Arn Tellem, or Stern and Jeff Schwartz. I don't know. And just try to figure this out for 8 hours. Why can't that happen? Wouldn't that help the season possibly?
The difficulty is having one agent that's going to represent all agents. I mean, even with the group of 7 that got together, which was an amazing, getting together of the 5 families, in this case 7, I guess. That was amazing. But you're getting to what I suggested, which is you have this independent negotiator. Because it's true, people want to get on the agents. The agents understand the ins and outs and how to make a deal far better than Billy Hunter, obviously far better than the players. I would say far better than the economists. So that's the thing for me that makes this so difficult, and it's why I found out why you want to know why these marathon sessions went so long? It's because you really didn't have a negotiator on the player's side. So every time something happened, it would take an immense amount of time to kind of explain it all, and then they'd have to go back to their respective groups and kind of chew it over. And so,
all right, but hold on one second.
You should have that kind of guy.
So when somebody negotiates a contract for them, they use the agents. When they negotiate their collective contract,
isn't that crazy?
It doesn't seem like they have somebody on the level of Arn Tellem or
Bill Duffy or whoever. Hold on. I mean, Kessler is,
Kessler's a joke. What are you talking about? That guy's a bulldog.
Whatever you want to say about his, way out of line comments and how he inflames things, as a pure negotiator, his reputation is up there with any negotiator you want.
That's why they kicked him out of the NFL lockout.
But nobody's
the only
questioning.
Reason they got a deal done is to get him out of there.
You can't question his skill as a negotiator. You can question his tactics, his personality, all that kind of stuff. But you can't.
Who gains more from an antitrust lawsuit than Kessler?
Nobody has been more down on the union's tactics than me, but it's not because they didn't have an able negotiator. I mean, that's not the issue. At least not to
I
me.
totally disagree, Stein.
I disagree, and I think where we are right now is proof of that. I mean, how can you say that the players have negotiated well since this began?
With what leverage? They have no leverage.
4% of BRI.
But they have no leverage. So how are they ever going to negotiate well? They've got
so part of the
leverage.
Part of the negotiation is to establish your leverage.
And that's why the agents were the ones who were right when they said in July, we need to decertify. It is the only way we can have leverage. It's the only way we can manufacture a gun. And without decertifying, we don't even have a squirt gun. And that's and so I mean that's why they were right. I mean, we can say, Stern can say they have too much influence, they're greedy, they're worried about their commissions. The fact of the matter is they were the ones who saw the only path to leverage for this group of players and have been advocating it since July.
Okay, so if you are the negotiator, if you're the lead negotiator, how do you not listen to that? How do you not agree? How do you say, you know what, I don't have the baseball bat that I need. This is what we have to do so that I can get it. Or do you go to the table and say, hey, you know what, I don't have any leverage, and let's hope that if we give them 4% back on BRI right off the bat, that's going to somehow gain us some leverage. To me, that's a bad negotiator. I don't know how you get around that.
I guess it's semantics, because I'm speaking more to just his reputation and skill as a negotiator. That doesn't necessarily mean that he charted the best course for the people he was representing. That speaks to motivations, not his ability to negotiate.
Also, I don't think the players right away went to 53. That took some time. We didn't really start negotiating until 5 weeks ago.
It didn't take very long, and there wasn't anything coming back the other way. Again, look, I agree wholeheartedly. I wish that the players had recognized we've been talking to the owners for 2 years. We haven't gotten anywhere. Let them know early on, you know what, if we're not going to talk seriously about a deal, because look, it was just presumed that we were going to start a lockout on July 1. Why did that have to happen? And and which side was going to be hurt by that more? The players, without question. So why wouldn't you, once it's already been, now the one thing we don't know, and this is something that I hope to find out, is did they gain any more legal position? Was there anything gained by bargaining in good faith, not pulling the trigger right away, going into October and all the things? Because, look, the things that those guys were saying on TV, David Stern bringing up that Jeffrey Kessler threatened the decertification months ago, that was all tactical. That was all, we're going to bring that up in court. And so that's why they're stating these things. And I just wonder if there are maneuvers that were made over the course of these last couple months that they had to make so that if it did go to court, if it did become legal, that they would have a better chance of winning.
Right, and I'm sure that the union would say in the NFL they disclaimed too soon, and that's what undid their case when it finally went to court. So we're going to negotiate hard at the start of the summer and show that we went into this in good faith. But again, they still could have taken this decision in August, September, even October. It was clear then that the road to a deal was still windy, bumpy, any metaphor you want to use. So they could have started. It was clear at
the All-Star break.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Hunter says every day, I saw this coming 2-3 years ago. So, negotiate for a month, negotiate for 2 months, then, pull the tab. It's time. It was the only play, and it always was the only play. The NBA is not the NFL. As much as the three of us love the game, America isn't building its Sundays around NFL games. And NFL players didn't get a good deal. That's something that people forget. NFL players didn't get a great deal. Why would the owners in the NFL sign a 10-year deal if it was favorable to the players? If NFL players don't have the leverage to get a great deal, how are the NBA guys going to get one?
Yeah, and that's the problem. I have a problem with people keep comparing the NBA to the NFL to Major League Baseball. First of all, the best players in the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball, there is not a limit on the length of contract or the amount of money that the best players can make. How is it that the best players in the NBA are limited in what they can make? How can we look at that and say that that's fair? Well, the reason that doesn't matter to the general public is because they can't grasp that anybody could possibly be worth the massive sums that these guys are worth. But the other thing is that, and as we talked about it, about the value of one player. The value of one player in the NBA is completely different than one player in the NFL or Major League Baseball. One player can make your team profitable. And so this idea that, well, hey, the NFL players settled for this or whatever. Yeah, you got 50-some players, and there's no one guy that the system rests on, or there's no one guy that can carry the value of a franchise. LeBron James was worth $150 freaking million to the Cleveland Cavaliers. How can we say that, him getting paid $60 million a year, that's fair? How can, I mean, it's insane to make those comparisons. I know that this is impossible to do in a public forum, that the fans just not going to appreciate that. But from a business standpoint, there's a very real basis for it.
Well, that's the irony of this whole thing, is that you're talking about maybe 20 players that actually the superstars, I think, are underpaid. I think Kobe's worth
absolutely
$45 to $50 million a year in salary for what he's worth to the Lakers. I think LeBron is worth that. I think Wade is worth that. Like, you're talking about guys that not only alter the value of a franchise, but alter the value of the relevancy in that city, how much they can charge for tickets, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one of the weird things I don't get about this lockout. And I guess it's because it's such a small group. It's hard to fight for 20 really super rich guys. But it does seem like if you were just creating a system from scratch and saying what would make sense, Dwight Howard should be able to sign for $40 million a year. He's worth it.
But is that exclusive to basketball? I mean, every sport.
I mean, baseball works that way. A-Rod, if the Yankees want to give him $30 million a year, they can do it. You know, Matt Kemp just signed for $160 million for 8 years by the Dodgers. He was worth it to them. By the way, Matt Kemp now is going to make more than any NBA player 3 years from now. And that's somebody that, who's more famous, Matt Kemp or LeBron? Who's more important to their sport, Matt Kemp or LeBron? And he's going to make more money than LeBron. That doesn't totally make sense. And when the players are arguing about what's fair and unfair, they're not going to argue the merits of their superstars because they're built around their middle class. But I think the superstars should be able to make more money. I wish there was a way to figure that out.
My big concern is that with the way this is structured, is that you are going to have, if any semblance of this deal goes through, and we're eliminating that middle class, and you can say that there's money wasted there. I would argue that there are also guys that were paid there, and you can look at it statistically and say that if Shane Battier isn't worth what he's got paid, I would argue that what he does in the locker room, or a Luis Scola, there are certain guys that what they did in the locker room that they are worth that mid-range amount of money. But the problem is that if you listen, what's that?
Andre Blatch. I was kidding.
Okay. If you eliminate that, now you have a couple of superstars making a ton of money, and the rest of the guys at the other end. And I believe you create a disparity. Actually, I did a column for the magazine on this, that you're creating a disparity that, as much as we want to say, it's difficult to make a case for millionaires not getting along with millionaires, but you're creating a discrepancy in the locker room that you better have the right superstars. Because if you're going to the guy who's making $2 million and doesn't have a chance of making more, and he's your closer, and meanwhile the guy who's making 15 is a guy that is not carrying the full weight of making $15 million, then you're going to have problems in the locker room. You're going to have problems among players. You're going to have resentment, not only not with players inside the locker room, but resentment toward the teams of, you're paying that guy, and as a result of you paying that guy, I can't ever get paid. And With this system, you're running that risk, and ultimately that affects the game. You can't tell me that with the Dallas Mavericks, and we go to Game 6, and I look at and I think this is what we love about. I think this is what elevates professional sports. Is we love the acrobatics and the excellence of a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant or a Kobe Bryant, but what we really love is when these guys come together. And the fact, I think what caused everybody to fall in love with the Mavericks wasn't just Dirk Nowitzki, but it was the fact that when they get to a Game 6 and he can't hit the ocean, Jason Terry steps up, J.J. Barea steps up, Sean Marion steps up. And I just wonder if Dirk was making, say, $19 million a year, it's one thing if he's making whatever he's making and Jason Terry makes half of that. But what if he's making $19 million and Jason Terry is making $2 million, and he's the guy who ends up winning that championship? And you know what? Jason Terry can't ever make more than $2 million. Are we going to be okay with that? Are they going to be okay with that?
Well, but that's what I thought they should have addressed that with when they were really trying to rehaul this system. I had an idea, and it doesn't have to be this idea, but just for every year that you play in a city, your team gets to spend $500,000 more than any other team that's competing for services. So you look at a situation like Dirk. Steinemo, how long has he been there? 14 years?
13.
13 years. All right.
13 years, 107. No.
Let's say 13 years, and let's say it was $400,000 per year. You get to just add on to his contract that nobody can do. So now for him to stay in Dallas, it's worth an extra, I don't know, $7 million a year more than anybody else can pay. And maybe you make it so that becomes part of the escrow, or there's ways to do it that now you're making somebody like LeBron James who wants to leave Cleveland, he's leaving basically loyalty money on the table. And if he still wants to go, so be it. You'll make the money back in Miami with marketing or whatever, but at least make these guys think a little bit. And that's it. I just feel like the creative thinking just hasn't been there. It's from the get-go, this has all been about, you guys have too much money. We must take your money. No, you can't have our money. No, we want your money. And this isn't a negotiation. It's two kids fighting over cookies. It's embarrassing.
Right. Well, and that's why I said I think the relationship has to change. I think that if ultimately this cataclysm causes the two sides to go back to the feeling we had, back in the 80s, where they realized, we need each other. We need each other to grow. David, Larry, Magic, that you felt like that was a partnership. I do not feel like this is a partnership at this point.
I agree with you. Do you feel that way, Steinemo?
No, I think it's the other side, too. What's going to happen when they finally do get a deal? That's where you worry about the lingering bad feelings.
Yeah.
I think those of us who love the game, we're going to get over it in time, but it's going to be real interesting to see, because it's clear that the owners are squeezing and squeezing and squeezing, and then they're going to turn right around and say, Kobe, LeBron, Dirk, go fix it. Go out there and be your magical selves and win back our fans that we've just alienated. And they're not going to be too happy about it.
And with the owners, and I think this was their fatal mistake. And again, I don't think there's a side to pick, because I think this was mutual assured destruction. But the owners never kind of couched this in a way that they weren't screwing over the players. And they just, we're going to miss the season unless you go here. And at no point did you ever hear anybody say, you know what, we don't want to totally pull these guys' pants down. Let's give them, we'll start the BRI, well, they'll get 53 the first 2 years, and then it'll drop down to 50, and that'll let them save some face. Like, I don't think I've ever heard the word save some face involved in this lockout from either side.
But and the face saving that was another reason why you thought Hunter was going to do we'll put it to a vote if you give us these 3 to 5 concessions. That was the perfect setup for Stern to sell 1 or 2 givebacks that were in the public domain, and then that would have been the face saver.
All right, last question after. Oh, go ahead.
Well, just the last thing, and we're saying, but they didn't have any leverage until they decertified. Do we agree on that?
I don't even think that's leverage. I don't think I mean, yeah, at this point it's some leverage, but it costs them an entire season. Whatever they win now isn't going to make up what they lost.
Why does it cost you an entire season? I mean, there's still room to negotiate. They can negotiate even after they file the suit.
Well, why aren't they negotiating right now?
Who knows?
Negotiating?
Let's hope they are.
Who are the leaders now? You have now Hunter and Stern are just playing chicken.
Well,
on
Hunter
the
and
highway.
Stern have to get on the phone.
Billy and David can talk. They can talk the same way as they have.
Right. It just can't be full bargaining sessions, I believe.
But Stern stupidly already gave his ultimatum, and he said we're not. Now the offer's
come on.
worse.
Nothing he says on TV means anything. I mean,
He said that to him privately. He said, "Here's the offer. On this day, it will get worse." And now we're at this day.
But has he declared that? I mean, he hasn't declared. He did. He
declared it last week.
He canceled more. No. Well, yeah, and they continued to negotiate. I mean, I still haven't heard him pull this last offer off the table. Do we know officially their offer is now 47%?
I mean,
no declaration.
They're not publicly making that declaration, but that's no more than an implication at this point.
Well, are we? But we're guessing at it. Like,
right.
why are we guessing at what their offer is?
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. And look, frankly, I think Billy Hunter expected that by disclaiming yesterday that is what would happen, that Stern would pick up the phone and say, Billy, you and I have been doing this a long time. Let's figure this out, just me and you. But again, even if they do, even if by tomorrow they've come to some sort of season-saving agreement, they still got to pass it through their respective sides. And that is tougher than ever. Maybe even tougher on the owner side than the player side.
I agree. Much tougher on the owner side.
Even the owners, though. Even the owners, I think it's easy for these small market teams to talk tough, but then when a ballot's in their hand to actually look Stern in the eye and vote no.
There were already too many owners that were against wherever they were, and now I just feel like what is it going to take? 2 more to flip? Stern won't even have the votes anyway.
I mean, is this verifiable? I mean, the way I heard it going into Monday, based on the deal as it was on the table, the best estimates I heard were a vote would have passed roughly 20-9 in favor if you voted the owners. Remember, there's only 29 owners with the league owning the Hornets.
How do New Orleans counts, right, as a vote?
Yeah, so 21-9 was the best estimate that I could come up with talking to people over the weekend. And
that's interesting.
That's not the majority. That's not the majority that Stern wanted. Stern wants a 29-1 score, but it's also not the 16-14 really, really sketchy vote that makes you think, wow, this thing might actually not pass.
I thought it was 17-13, but I mean, those people are all voting on we're not going to miss a single game, and it's been estimated. This is unofficial, but I think every game they lose costs them $1 million, right? And
again, that's an estimate. I can't sit here and tell you that it was exactly 20-9. But last week 17-13 was the way it was portrayed to me, and by the weekend it was roughly 20-9.
All right, 20-second answer. Does this get settled or do we lose the season, Steiny Mo?
I'm still gullible enough to say that we'll be playing in January, but do I have the evidence to back it up? No. I mean,
Bucher, 20-second answer.
I am going to say that we're still going to find a way to get something done.
Really?
But I say that right now, not having looked at all of the legal wranglings that are involved here. I'll be honest. I'm saying that not out of knowledge. I'm saying that out of hope that
with your heart. Me
they
too.
Can still salvage it.
It's looking bleak.
I will say this. If they had done this July 1, we would be having a season. I'm convinced of that.
We all agree on that one, right?
For sure. Or August 1 or even September 1.
Oh, one more 20-second answer. So there's no chance.
You're like David Stern, man. What? This is it. Last 20-second question. Okay,
my
we'll ultimatum.
My ultimatum. It feels, the little tentacles I have at it does feel like some of the smarter players or some of the more vocal players are going to start coming out this week and maybe criticizing how this whole thing was handled.
Hey,
I think it's going to be this week. When do you see that happening, Stein?
You raised the point, and I don't have an answer for you. When Louis Scola goes on Twitter and says, "Why can't we vote on this deal?" I don't know what they tell him. It's a fair question. Now, are 200 guys going to publicly ask that question? Probably not.
No,
if that would happen, maybe something would change.
You know what's interesting is, what would prevent a player who didn't get to vote on this deal from suing Billy Hunter or what is now a trade association from suing them for blowing up their livelihood, for taking away their job,
or for suing him for negligence, or for I guess that'd be a tough lawsuit to pull off. But you could potentially have a case here that your union was so poorly run that they misrepresented you and cost you a year's pay.
Well, and that they didn't, that they didn't give your voice was not heard. If you go in and look at the lack of communication that Steiny Mo was talking about, and guys could make the argument. I reached out. I tried to find out what was going on. I tried to be able to impart my position, and I was not represented. They made a decision that directly affected me without informing me or giving me an opportunity to voice my opinion. I got to believe you might have a case.
Doesn't someone have to pay for all these lawsuits? There sure seems like there's going to be a lot of lawsuits flying around.
You could do like a class action, or it would only take one guy to get it going. And I do think that, I think the season's going to get canceled, but the one chance I see for this to get solved is if a couple of the players, and I think Kobe would have to lead the way, because Kobe seems like he's teetering on the fence of really just going Kaiser Soze on everybody. Because
but we thought that was going to happen yesterday when he was at the meeting, and by all accounts it didn't happen.
I still think think about Kobe, think how competitive he is, think how mad he is that last season ended up with the sweep. Think about how nobody is more aware of his biological clock, 2, the scoring records that he's thinking about. This takes him out for a year. 3,
he doesn't have a year to lose. He doesn't.
He doesn't have a year to lose, and he's over competitive, and I think he's smarter than just about anybody else in this process. And I could see him being the guy who says, you know what? Screw these guys. I want to play, and who's with me? Buke, you've dealt with him a lot. You couldn't see him doing that?
Certainly, I could see him making that case. I believe he already has in a variety of ways.
But not publicly.
I just don't know. I don't know that he has that sway. I don't know that in a room that he's going to be able to convince a group. It may be what he wants. He may go ballistic. I'm just not sure that he's in a place now in his career where guys are going to rally around him. I'll be honest. There's other guys, whether it's a Steve Nash or maybe a Dwayne Wade, maybe even I'm quite honestly, if Paul Pierce was on that side of the equation, I've heard there's a tremendous, no matter how we want to look at him, I heard he carries an awful lot of respect.
Any player that steps up here, any player that steps up and takes an active role, no matter what side they're on, you have to applaud them because too few guys have. So if you don't like the certification, you don't like the way Pierce is doing it, certainly you're entitled to that opinion. But to me,
it depends on where that happens. The idea that Kevin Garnett going in, or even Paul going in and being, or Dwayne Wade, these guys going nuts emotionally in the negotiating room. There's no way you applaud that. That's the perfectly wrong place to do that. If you want to do that among your group, to rally your groups, rally your crew, 100% I'm behind you. I applaud that. But the idea of doing it in front of the owners, you've lost. You've conceded. Nobody goes into the negotiating table and has spittle flying and don't point your finger at me. To me, you've missed the whole point of why we're here. We're trying to get a deal. We're not our emotions and our pride and all that stuff. You got to park that and try to figure out how do I get what I need out of this? Not, are you disrespecting me?
Well, and that's what it's been personal for the players from the get-go, and I think that's been one of the problems. And I don't think I wrote yesterday. I tweeted that the owners wanted to blow up the season. The players gave them the gas and the matches, and the two sides deserved. I do think it's funny though that I could be in a situation here where I'm rooting for Kobe, because I do think he's the guy. But
yesterday would have been the day to do it. Yesterday would have been, if he was going to do it, yesterday was the day.
Yeah, but
or if he could do it, if he could do it, yesterday would have been the day.
Well, there's.
But
still time,
here's the other part. I mean, Kobe, Derek Fisher, there's that whole alliance, and for Kobe to do it, basically he would have had to throw Derek under the bus and to take that approach.
Well, it's not like Kobe has never pushed anyone under a bus. Oh, come on. Anybody?
Are you feeling better now? Are you feeling better? You felt so
Crickets
uncomfortable
for that last
you had to
joke?
be in the position of rooting for Kobe. I love it. Hey, by the way, you tweeted like a couple days ago that that you were hoping that I'm rooting for NBA players to decertify, if only for comedy's sake. So now they decertify, and now you got an issue with it. Like, how many times are you going to flip-flop?
It's not a flip-flop. It happened, and it wasn't funny.
But that's the thing, they didn't decertify.
It was just sad.
They didn't
They didn't really decertify. They did the
disclaimed,
half-ass disclaimer thing.
which is worse.
So you misread the situation as badly as Jeffrey Kessler, David Stern, and the owners.
That is not true. And I do think that I wrote this last night. I think there will be multiple books written about this, and maybe even an HBO movie along the lines of The Late Shift on how badly this was handled on both sides, and the characters involved in this, and the egos, and just how obstinate people were, and it's just a total cluster F. Unfortunately, I can't use the full word, but I mean it's just total.
You do know that I'm already working on that.
You're writing another book, I thought.
No.
You're doing this book now?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited to read it.
It's a versatile book. It can be whatever kind of book you want it to be.
It's pretty fascinating with when you look at like just all of the things that brought us to this place, and then the difficulty that I'm facing right now is stuff still keeps happening where you go, oh my gosh, this is it's been pretty. I mean, part of it too is like it's happening, and then you got to be able to sort of nail it down and get to all the people that you have to have the conversations with to have the full picture and perspective. But
it's also like if you're making
why we are at this place is and what we're going to look like afterward is something that I'm working on.
And if you were to make a movie about it, I don't even know who the hero would be. There's not that one guy who's like, oh man, it's up to that guy to save this. Like, where is that guy? I don't even know. But on that note, let's end this Mammoth podcast. We're going to have to turn it into two parts. Ric Bucher.
I might have
Marc
to go
Stein.
3.
Yeah, 3-part or whatever. Thanks for the time, fellas. And hopefully, I'm doubtful on this, but hopefully the next time we do one of these, there will be an NBA season. And if that happens in 2014, so be it.
Don't forget, $350 checks to both of us if the New Orleans
when the Hornets are sold for
$350 million.
No, you said it would be right now.
We didn't say today.
What's the time limit? What do I get?
Set a time
limit. It's when they get sold for $350 million. Period.
So what do I get if they don't? You send me $350 million?
No, you're the one who made the offer. It wasn't a bet. It was an offer.
All right, we'll see.
You made the offer. If they sell for $350 million, I will write each of you a check for $350. Done.
Right. Fine. It'll be for 35, but whatever. Thanks, guys.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
You laughed, you cried, you cranked up the volume to your neighbors call the cops, and now it's all over. But Bill will be back another day with another dose of the good stuff. Until then, get some more good stuff at Subway restaurants, like the Mega Meaty Big Philly Cheesesteak or try one of the other tender, juicy Subway steak melts, like the mouth-watering steak and cheese or the melt-delicious steak, bacon, egg, and cheese for breakfast. So head to Subway today and treat your taste buds to some fresh toasted flavor. Subway, eat fresh.